I tortured myself and decided that if I married Jem and Dill had a sister whom he married, our children would be double first cousins? Gee minity, Jem, I said when Atticus had gone. They're funny folks. Do you hear that, Auntie? Aunt Alexandra was hooking a rug and not watching us, but she was listening. She sat in her chair with her work basket beside her, her rug spread across her lap. Why ladies hooked woolen rugs on boiling nights never became clear to me. I heard it, she said. I remembered the distant disastrous occasion when I rushed to young Walter Cunningham's defense. Now I was glad to have done it. Soon school starts, I'm going to ask Walter home to dinner, I planned, having forgotten my private resolve to beat him up the next time I saw him. He can stay over sometimes after school, too. Atticus could drive him back to Old Sarum. Maybe he could spend the night with us sometime, okay, Jem? We'll see about that, Aunt Alexandra said, a declaration that with her was always a threat, never a promise. Surprised, I turned to her. Why not, Auntie? They're good folks. She looked at me over her sewing glasses. Jean Louise, there is no doubt in my mind that they're good folks, but they're not our kind of folks. Jem says, she means they're yappy, Scout. What's a yap? Tacky. They like fiddling and things like that. Well, I do too. Don't be silly, Jean Louise, Aunt Alexandra said. The thing is, you can scrub Walter Cunningham till he shines. You can put him in shoes and a new suit, but he'll never be like Jem. Besides, there's a drinking streak in that family a mile wide. Finch women aren't interested in that sort of people. Auntie, said Jem, she ain't even 9 yet. She may as well learn it now. Aunt Alexandra had spoken. I was reminded vividly of the last time she'd put her foot down. I never knew why. It was when I was absorbed with plans to visit Calpurnia's house. I was curious, interested. I wanted to be her company, to see how she lived, with who her friends were. I might as well have wanted to see the other side of the moon. This time the tactics were different, but Aunt Alexandra's aim was the same. Perhaps this was why she had come to live with us, to help us choose our friends. I would hold her off as long as I could. If they're good folks, then why can't I be nice to Walter? I didn't say not to be nice to him. You should be friendly and polite to him. You should be gracious to everybody, dear, but you don't have to invite him home. What if he was kin to us, Auntie? The fact is that he is not kin to us, but if he were, my answer would be the same. Auntie, Jem spoke up, Atticus says you can choose your friends, but you sure can't choose your family. And they're still kin to you no matter whether you acknowledge them or not, and it makes you look right silly when you don't. That's your father all over again, said Aunt Alexandra, and I still say that Jean Louise will not invite Walter Cunningham to this house. If he were her double first cousin once removed, he would still not be received in this house, unless he comes to see Atticus on business. Now that is that. She had said indeed not, but this time she would give her reasons. But I want to play with Walter, Auntie. Why can't I? She took off her glasses and stared at me. I'll tell you why, she said. Because he is trash. That's why you can't play with him. I'll not have you around him, picking up his habits and learning Lord knows what. You're enough of a problem to your father as it is. I don't know what I would have done, but Jem stopped me. He caught me by the shoulders, put his arm around me, and led me sobbing in fury to his bedroom. Atticus heard us and poked his head around the door. It's all right, sir, Jem said gruffly. It's not anything. Atticus went away. Have a chew, Scout. Jem dug into his pocket and extracted a Tootsie Roll. It took a few minutes to work the candy into a comfortable wad inside my jaw. Jem was rearranging the objects on his dresser. His hair stuck up behind and down in front, and I wondered if it would ever look like a man's. Maybe if he shaved it off and started over, his hair would grow back neatly in place. His eyebrows were becoming heavier, and I noticed a new slimness about his body. He was growing taller. When he looked around, he must have thought I would start crying again, for he said, "Show you something if you won't tell anybody." I said, "What?" He unbuttoned his shirt, grinning shyly. "Well, what?" "Well, can't you see it?" "Well, no." "Well, it's hair." "Where?" "There, right there." He had been a comfort to me, so I said it looked lovely, but I didn't see anything. "It's real nice, Jem." "Under my arms, too," he said. "Going out for football next year. Scout, don't let Auntie aggravate you." It seemed only yesterday that he was telling me not to aggravate Auntie. "You know she's not used to girls," said Jem. "Leastways not girls like you. She's trying to make you a lady. Can't you take up sewing or something?" "Hell no. She doesn't like me, and that's all there is to it, and I don't care. It was her calling Walter Cunningham trash that got me going. Jem, not what she said about being a problem to Atticus. We got that all straight one time. I asked him if I was a problem, and he said not much a one, at most one that he could always figure out, and not to worry my head a second about bothering him. Naw, it was Walter. That boy's not trash, Jem. He ain't like the Ewells." Jem kicked off his shoes and swung his feet to his bed. He propped himself against a pillow and switched on the reading light. You know something, Scout? I've got it all figured out now. I thought about it a lot lately, and I've got it figured out. There are 4 kinds of folks in the world. There's the ordinary kind like us and the neighbors. There's the kind like the Cunninghams out in the woods, the kind like the Yules down at the dump, and the Negroes. What about the Chinese and the Cajuns down yonder in Baldwin County? I mean in Macomb County. The thing about it is, our kind of folks don't like the Cunninghams don't like the Yules hate and despise the colored folks. I told Jem if that was so, then why didn't Tom's jury, made up of folks like the Cunninghams, acquit Tom to spite the Yules? Jem waved my question away as being infantile. You know, he said, I've seen Atticus pat his foot when there's fiddling on the radio, and he loves pot liquor better than anybody I ever saw. Then that makes us like the Cunninghams, I said. I can't see why, Auntie. No, let me finish. It does. But we're still different somehow. Atticus said one time the reason Auntie's so hyped on the family is because all we've got is background and not a dime to our names. Well, Jem, I don't know. Atticus told me one time that most of this old family stuff's foolishness because everybody's family's just as old as everybody else's. I said, did that include the colored folks and the Englishmen? And he said yes. Background doesn't mean old family, said Jem. I think it's how long your family's been reading and writing. Scout, I've studied this real hard, and that's the only reason I can think of. Somewhere along when the Finches were in Egypt, one of them must have learned a hieroglyphic or 2 and he taught his boy. Jem laughed. Imagine Auntie being proud. Her great-granddaddy could read and write. Ladies sure pick funny things to be proud of. Well, I'm glad he could, or who'd have taught Atticus and them, and if Atticus couldn't read, you and me'd be in a fix. I don't think that's what background is, Jem. Well then, how do you explain why the Cunninghams are different? Mr. Walter can hardly sign his name. I've seen him. We've just been reading and writing longer than they have. No, everybody's got to learn. Nobody's born knowing. That Walter's as smart as he can be. He just gets held back sometimes because he has to stay out and help his daddy. Nothing's wrong with him. Nah, Jem, I think there's just one kind of folks. Folks! Jem turned around and he punched his pillow. When he settled back, his face was cloudy. He was going into one of his declines, and I grew wary. His brows came together. His mouth became a thin line. He was silent for a while. That's what I thought, too, he said at last. When I was your age, if there's just one kind of folks, why can't they get along with each other? If they're all alike, why do they go all to their way to despise each other? Scout, I think I'm beginning to understand something. I think I'm beginning to understand why Boo Radley stayed shut up in the house all this time. It's because he wants to stay inside.